Gaming is down bad. To put it briefly, I'm going to be talking about the state of gaming in this video. This is not like a super structured video essay. This is more of just kind of me complaining, and I'm just going to put a couple points up, and at the end I'm going to have some miscellaneous points that I don't really have a good way of like weaving into this narrative that I'm trying to talk about here, but are just things that really annoy the shit out of me. So that's kind of the idea here. So the thing about unfinished releases is that they used to be the exception. Most games would come out finished, completely done, because there used to be no updates, no ability to update games. And maybe you get like a disc DLC at one point. It was all done at the start. But now it has become the expected. It is expected for a AAA studio to release a game that is unfinished, broken, and then have like a 50 gigabyte day one patch. That is kind of the expectation nowadays. And the example everyone points to for this is Cyberpunk 2077, which I think is very fair. I think it's a very, very fair thing because they literally did exactly that. Overpromised in expectation, underdelivered in actuality with like giant patches. But if we're talking company-wide, I think the best example of this would be Bethesda. Bethesda has literally made a career off of being that. Every game they put out is broken, and unlike other games, most of the time they don't even fully try to patch it. They don't try to hide this shit. It is part of the Bethesda experience to have these bugs in your game. Shit, I mean, even to this day, I have played Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4, and had like game-breaking bugs. The main reason why publishers are okay doing this, or they feel okay doing this, is because it has become the expectation. One, that's the big thing. Two, because publishers realize it doesn't matter if you ship a broken game, it's still going to make a bunch of money, and they'd rather get it out faster rather than slower. People get a lot more mad, it seems, on social media when the game is delayed rather than when the game launches. And then also, the reason why Bethesda specifically feels okay doing this, first of all, they own their own publisher, so it wouldn't even matter if the publisher thinks it's okay, because they own it, so they get to set the rules. And the second reason is that everybody has been sucking their dick for years. Literal years, people have been just gargling, milking the cum out of Todd Howard's penis. This all may change now because they got bought out by Microsoft. They might try to actually force them to clean their games up after release, but there's no shot that they actually will like become a good developer now because of it. Now, don't get me wrong. Everybody does this. This has become an industry-wide thing that happens. It's not just CD Projekt Red and Bethesda that do this. It is pretty much pertinent throughout the entire AAA scene. To illustrate how bad this is, I will use this example. The three big shooters recently came out, and by recently I mean like 6 months ago. Don't at me, it takes me a while to make videos. Battlefield, Call of Duty, and Halo. They all came out somewhat recently. And there's been some online discourse about which one launched the best, which one is the best to play, and so on and so forth. And after long deliberating and a lot of time thinking about this, joint in hand, smoking weed all day, I have to say that I think Halo launched the best. Now, why would I think this? Now, if you're unaware, Battlefield 2042 launched possibly the most broken a game has ever launched before. It is just as bad as Cyberpunk in a lot of ways. But the main reason why it's not talked about as much as Cyberpunk was is because they also didn't promise as much, and also because DICE has a long history of doing this to people. But this one was pretty much the worst it's ever been. And then for Call of Duty Vanguard, I think the main reason why that one's not looked as happily upon is because pretty much every mechanic that's in that game has been in previous games, and they haven't really added anything. They just kind of reskinned all the mechanics from Modern Warfare into World War II aesthetics, and then just kind of launched it. And that makes a lot of people just not necessarily like excited to play your game. Plus, Plus, the company who made Vanguard has a lot of sexual harassment and discrimination allegations going on currently. And then on top of that, the entire like campaign of it is basically just a generic World War II shooter, just like incredibly uninspired. And I haven't played it. This is all just information I found off of like PC Gamer and IGN and all these sort of like review websites, and just also general like Twitter comments, but you can never really trust those. And also, according to PC Gamer, there is a shitload of bugs that need to be fixed within Vanguard, and that I just have a doubt that they might actually fix them. So now this all leads up to Halo Infinite. First of all, it's the best in the series since Reach, I think. I don't think it's close to as good as like Reach or 3 or 2 or 1, but it's like fine, it's good. In comparison to Halo 4 and 5, it doesn't feel bad to play like both of those do. It just kind of is a little boring after a while. The gameplay loop just isn't really that inspired. And on top of all of this, like, Halo didn't launch with that many bugs, if any. I didn't experience any myself, at least. Really long load times, but that's about it. And that's kind of just a breath of fresh air in comparison to pretty much every other release nowadays. Pretty much every release nowadays is either a buggy mess or you can't even launch it on day one because you have to wait for the 50 to 70 gigabyte fucking patch to go through. And so because of that, even though the game itself wasn't really anything different and wasn't even really that fun, just in comparison to the other two major shooters that launched this year, it just looked a lot better. And so I think people are kind of padding the score because of that, because it didn't launch a broken, shitty mess. Like, people are praising Halo Infinite as like the best shooter that's come out in a long time because it didn't launch unfinished. Granted, only the multiplayer launched, but that's better than launching a story that's not finished or a multiplayer that's buggy and broken. But people are, because of this, praising it as like one of the best shooters. And do you realize how sad that is? The game is like pretty boring, all things considered. And like, people are sucking it off because it was finished on launch. That's the sad state of affairs we're in at this point. Over the years, gaming has gone from being like almost grassroots, not like actually grassroots, but grassroots feeling in a way, to being as corporate as corporatization can get. Granted, it's the entertainment industry's most profitable like genre, which is why it's so corporatized. And because of that, there's a lot of money in the scene, and with money comes businessmen, and with businessmen come greed and apathy. I was listening to the official podcast, and they ended up saying this kind of on this subject.
I think towards the end of the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 generation, we entered a gaming dark age, and that's when all of this started. I think to the beginning of that and before, games were made by, you know, smaller teams with more passionate ideas, and they would space out their products to really diversify them or just make them good. But after a certain point around PlayStation 4, Xbox One, it became too big. Now everything's got to hit yearly deadlines. Everything's got to hit these microtransaction sales numbers. Everything has to follow this franchise. There's just too much. It's oversaturated. It's shit.
I think the 360 and the PS3 era still had some of the biggest innovation in gaming early on. So like if Crobcat recently posted that video of Back 4 Blood versus Left 4 Dead 1 and 2. And Left 4 Dead 1 and 2 are leaps and bounds ahead of Back 4 Blood, like even from a technical standpoint. Like the amount of work that went into those games on things most people wouldn't even think about is absurd. From like sound
the AI
design,
director.
Yep, like from sound design to how the AI interacts to how like they fall over. There was like, I think he said 790 unique combinations of ways you could shoot the body parts off of the infected. Whereas in Back 4 Blood, you can't even shoot anything more than like arms and legs off. They just fall over. They just ragdoll instantly. Like nowadays, game companies can make the easiest games because they know people will buy it regardless. They don't need to innovate. They don't need to put the extra work in to make the games great or have all of this like tender love and care. Another one was Gears of War 5 versus Gears of War 1. In
Yep.
Gears 5, when you shoot glass, it just like insta breaks. In Gears 1 or 2, I don't remember which one you compared it to. Shooting glass, you'd be able to like chip parts of it away. Like everything had dynamic like destruction and just so much more going on that made it a better game. Whereas a modern game, it just doesn't need it because gamers will buy that
There's
shit no matter
tons-
what.
Modern games obviously do have higher technical fidelity and look far better and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I agree that a lot more love and creativity and care were put into games in earlier generations.
And I really do feel the same way. I feel like games have lost a lot of the same luster they used to have. Also, I want to state, when I say games here, I mean like AAA games. A lot of indie games still bring that sort of like fun passion that I had for like all games back when I was a kid. I'm just talking about AAA titles at this point. I feel like AAA games nowadays are just devoid of all passion or thought processes on why it's good. I think now it is just simply a money machine. Now, a great example of what I mean by like they used to have passion and things used to be important in gaming is Halo 3 actually. The Xbox 360 servers were shutting down a few months ago. And with that means the original Halo 3 lobbies were also shutting down. It's kind of the reason why Microsoft ported all the Halo games to PC, as well as that just making sense business-wise. Now, when most servers shut down, there's like some people that do this, but the majority of them just kind of are like, okay, well, that's unfortunate, but it was fun. What did people do, you might ask? They blew the dust off their shitty Xbox 360s from their attics. They plugged it into their giant TVs in their shitty apartment and they played all fucking night. Now, I personally don't have a 360 anymore. I sold that bitch for fucking rent. If you don't know, I work with a channel called Retro Bros. They do like gaming related stuff. I edit for them and I appear on screen sometimes. Also, they're like main moderator for live streams. I hopped on to the Retro Bros live stream and there was like a lot of people watching, which is kind of a normal, we're a smaller channel. And Joss, the main person who runs the channel, they were playing Halo 3 matchmaking on the 360. And even though I wasn't playing, and even though I wasn't really even in the Halo 3 like matchmaking days, because I didn't have Xbox Live when Halo 3 was like active, because I was too broke, it was possibly the most wholesome and satisfying thing I've ever witnessed in terms of gaming. Like, the only other thing that comes close is a lot of stuff in Melee, but Melee is a grassroots community, so it just makes sense. And I love Melee. But it was possibly the most wholesome thing I've ever seen in terms of gaming in recent years. People were sharing, like, the absolute importance that Halo 3 had to them in their childhood. Like, some people were like, this game raised me, or I had one person say that, like, their relative died of cancer and before they died they got them an Xbox 360 like for Christmas, and so a couple months after they died they got an Xbox 360 with Halo 3 for Christmas, and like that became the way that they like bonded with their past relative. Like that is, oh my god, you can never have that with a game these days. Like you just couldn't. There's no game that has come out that is that emotionally important to people. Like I think the thing that comes closest is probably like Valorant, maybe, for like if you're trying to get competitive, but Valorant's also just like so toxic. And like I related to a lot of these people because a lot of you know I'm part of the music scene in Washington, and specifically the metal and punk music scene here. And a lot of my closest friends I have met either from that scene or because I have liked similar music to other people I've met. I can honestly say, without liking all of this music, I don't think I would have the friends I have today. And I don't think I would know the amazing musicians I know today because of this. And listen, if you're one of those people who don't think a game can have this effect on people, just watch this clip from the stream.
Clip it, say hi. Hi. Yo, this is fucking...
It was like truly emotional for a lot of these people. A good mix of nostalgia and childlike wonderment. Anyways, this is a really long and roundabout way of saying that gaming nowadays is just full of greed, apathy, and used as a money machine. Filled with exploitation, fake promises, and a mix of disappointment and apathy. Nothing from a AAA game dev has shocked me or surprised me in the last like 10 years maybe. It has been a long time since I have genuinely looked at a AAA game studio and been happy with the product I've received. They just don't do anything remotely original. They wait for an indie game or an underground game to do something first, and then they yoink the concept and idea and then spend way too much money on it, blow it up, and then they just release like a broken version of it that gains more traction than the underground version, and then everybody else copies it because they need to make money. That's all that gaming is nowadays. Look at all of the battle royale clones. H1N1, the swine flu game, was like one of the first battle royales in gaming. One of the first, not the first, but one of the first. That got like a little bit popular on Twitch back in the day. And then PUBG happened, and then Fortnite happened, and now there's a million other battle royale clones. Every shooter now has a battle royale mode. I feel like every shooter just has a battle royale mode. As cheesy and as corny as this is, games don't feel like they're made by gamers for gamers anymore, whereas they used to back when I was younger. It now just feels like they're made for profit by businessmen. And speaking of businessmen, let's talk about the shitty practices in the industry. So this has become a large topic on social media recently in the gaming space. It's a concept known as crunch. For people who don't know, crunch is basically like the equivalent of forced overtime in the gaming industry. But it is forced every day because they're behind on a schedule that would have been impossible to keep up with anyways. But this whole crunch thing causes a lot more issues than just bad employee practices. A lot of the times, because crunch forces you to try to work as fast as possible so you don't have to work as much overtime, it means that you end up leaving behind a lot of mistakes in your code. So then the company hires more devs to fix all the bugs that you left behind while making the baseline for all this stuff. And now, because there's so many devs working on the same game, too many cooks always spoil the broth. And it means that the game just loses its own self-identity. This is all thanks to the gaming industry becoming huge during the absolute desolate wasteland that is the American unionization drought that we have been having in the last like 20, 30, 40 years. In which case, it is a lot easier to abuse your own employees because they aren't unionized. I mean, shit, look at Blizzard and Riot and the company that made Call of Duty Vanguard. All they do is abuse their employees. And, you know, if you're a savvy, like, political person, you may be asking, well, why don't they just unionize? There's more of them than publishers, and publishers need them to make the games. It's a little more complicated than that. It's kind of the same way how the film industry's unions don't actually really do a whole lot. For instance, in the film industry, you are pretty much expected to work 14, 12, 16-hour days. And you're forced to work all of these because of how competitive the industry is. And say your union tries to strike. Say you're in the cinematography guild. Say that guild strikes because of something. The issue is, it is a lot easier to find scabs for the film industry than it is, say, for construction. In the construction industry, if a union strikes, it's nobody's like reaching to become a construction worker because they love construction. And if they are, they're already in the union because the union is very easy to get into in construction. If something strikes, generally it's kind of hard to find scabs because you're usually paying them less and they're usually getting treated worse, and the union is right there. So why wouldn't they just go join the union to get better benefits and pay and all that? For the film industry, so many people want to be in it. So many people want to be in the film industry. So if they get just a chance to be in it, even as a scab, they're going to take it because they can put it on their portfolio. And that's the big thing. They want the portfolio bump. They don't care what they're paid. They don't care how they're treated. They want the nice shiny accolade to go on the piece of paper or in the hyperlink. Which, that's the industry. That's how it's built right now. It needs to be restructured, but that's how it's built. Which is why unions in film don't really strike, and it's why it's really hard to change anything in the film industry. And the same goes for gaming. So many people want to get into the gaming industry. If a studio strikes, they'll just hire new people. They'll be fine. There's no shortage of devs or people dev adjacent. There's just not. So they don't have any real, like, actual leverage because of this. And because of this, it's all fucked up, dude. If you take anything away from this, don't support studios that use crunch time. Just don't. Support indie devs, never cross a picket line, and join the one big union. You know, I don't really have a segue for this, so now, this is all miscellaneous stuff that I'm not a big fan of. I just kind of hate. But I don't really have a good way to weave this in, so I'm just going to kind of list a bunch of stuff off, say why I think it's bad, and then move on. It's not really going to be like a deconstruction of it. It's just kind of things I don't like, why I don't like them. Moving on. The first thing I hate, AAA devs don't take risks anymore. Almost every game that comes out is just like the other 20 games that are in the same genre. Look no further than Ubisoft open world games. That's a perfect example of this exact feeling. Same thing with shooters. Look at every shooter right now. Same exact feeling. And if they are different, most of the time it's just a ripped off concept from an indie dev that they yoinked, made worse, and then sold for more. They're not trying to make anything new or different. They're trying to make the next money printer. The only game that's come out recently that's felt kind of new is really Elden Ring. Elden Ring takes a new approach to an open world that a lot of other game devs have not done. Now, to be completely transparent, I mean, it's a Souls game. It plays like almost every other Souls game. They're not exactly trying new things within their own little bubble of, you know, Dark Souls-like stuff, but they're doing new things in terms of open world, in terms of the general genre that they exist in. I just wish more AAA game studios would actually like take a risk, try something new, try new things that could be really cool and really sick. Next thing I dislike is microtransactions. I don't think I have to talk about this a lot. I think a lot of people understand what microtransactions are nowadays, but I'm just going to say that I think loot boxes are really exploitative. I think especially if you have a high player base of children, I think it's just child gambling, and I think it's really exploitative and really shitty. I don't really have an issue with there being a marketplace for like skins and that sort of stuff that you can just buy outright. But I do think gambling through gaming is a big fucking issue that a lot of people are just kind of okay with, and I think it's shitty. I also don't mind battle passes, especially if the game is either cheap or free. I think that's a really good way to gain monetization without it being shitty, and allowing as many people as want to be able to play your game for free. I think it's a really smart idea, and I think I like the fact that it's kind of been the model since Fortnite. I think that's one of the good things that Fortnite actually did do. I like that Halo Infinite's free. I like that Apex Legends is free. I like that Fortnite's free. I think that's smart. And I think that's ultimately kind of why it won out over PUBG in terms of like the de facto battle royale game. And the last thing I'll mention here is very briefly is like NFTs and gaming. You're bored to death of hearing about NFTs. I know it because I'm bored to death of hearing about NFTs. So I'm going to be really quick about this. If you don't know what NFTs are, run away very quickly. You don't have to know. Save yourself, king. You're better than this. If you do want to know, or you're already aware, and you don't really know why they're bad, but other people say they're bad, I would highly recommend watching the Folding Ideas video, Line Goes Down. It is possibly the best deconstruction of NFTs I've ever seen. You can go in as a complete layman, not knowing anything about the space, and he explains it all from the ground up and why it's bad or good or fine. It is a fantastic video. Again, it is 2 hours. It is a full fucking documentary, but it's fantastic. It's amazing. Really quickly to explain why the main reason why I think it's bad, aside from all the stuff he talks about, is I know a lot of artists, and all the artists I know have had their shit stolen and put on the blockchain, and they can't do anything about it. So that's shitty and really bad. Just like blatant art theft. And they're not even overt about it. There's like, yeah, I stole your shit, get fucked. Like, it's insane. And also, I just have a strong hatred for like finance bros and crypto bros and just like the hustle grind set. I fucking hate it so much. Because if NFTs are put into gaming, what more are you getting out of this? Okay, basically you're getting that the skin you get in the game, you can now sell for money. This has already been done. CSGO exists. Just do that. I don't understand. What will NFTs add to this? That's kind of the question you have to ask whenever someone's like, I'm implementing NFTs into this. What will they add? What will they actually add that doesn't already exist in a better, more thought out way? Also, something really quickly that a lot of people have been bringing up alongside NFTs in gaming is play to earn. Play to earn is basically the model of you play a game and you earn Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever blockchain they're using through playing the game. And main thing, if that becomes the standard, say goodbye to being able to play games as a relaxing hobby. If you play games now, you are now doing a job. You are basically doing the equivalent of hopping in your car after work, turning on the Uber app, and driving Uber for a couple hours, which is fucking annoying. And second thing is, we already have super toxic players in Valorant and Overwatch and League of Legends. I mean, they're known for being toxic in those communities. You don't think that they'll be worse if there's fucking money on the line? Oh my god, it'll be fucking awful. I don't know, it just seems really scummy to me. It just seems really annoying and scummy, and I just don't really want it to be in the space. So I'm going to talk about how you can change that now. So all industries eventually change into another thing, or they switch gears, or new genres are made, new things are put under the spotlight. So what is the process of that? How does that work? Well, industry people, especially the people holding the money, generally hate when new things pop up. New types of genres, new types of formulas, they're not the biggest fan. Because they're, in all fairness to them, they're putting in like $11 million into like a game or a project or something. If I was doing that, I too would want it to like pretty much guarantee work out, you know? I don't want to set like $11 million on fire. But there is a specific point where a project style or a genre becomes so mainstream that it ends up becoming niche because of this. And I have to give credit to my buddy Corbo. He is the one who kind of ran me through this idea and kind of taught me what this all means. So all of the credit for this section goes to him and just helping me understand this sort of stuff. But eventually, when something gets so big and so omnipresent within an industry, where to the point where everybody's seeing a million of the thing, people end up getting really tired of the thing. And there's two general ways that this happens. One is that a new thing comes out that changes the way that consumers absorb the entertainment. You can see this happening in the early 2000s and the late 90s with music, with the explosion of online music sharing platforms and stuff like that. It completely changed the way that we absorb music nowadays. The other way is a new genre or formula within the industry becomes very liked by a lot of people, and then the numbers will grow and take market share away from the popular thing, and then the popular thing will be left with really not much left. And you can see this in the 50s and 60s movie industry with the rise of other genres of movies outside of like noirs and romantic comedies and stuff like that. And the second, in my opinion, is most likely the thing that will revolutionize gaming again. I mean, you can already kind of see this with how indie devs are catching up to AAA games in terms of like quality and stuff like that. I mean, look at indie games right now. They are far more unique and interesting than anything that's come out of the AAA scene, and people are starting to pay attention to indie games a lot more than they ever have before. Basically, the goal is if indie developers start making games that people like really want to see and people start genuinely looking for and liking indie games, it starts taking away market share from like AAA studios who make the same cookie cutter open world game that's been made a million times. And so what I'm essentially trying to tell you is that the best thing you can do to get the industry to change is buy from indie devs and support indie devs in ways that make what they want to be doing possible. Now, the issue with all of this is that things like Call of Duty and Halo and Battlefield and FIFA and 2K and all these sorts of like giant big games that everybody knows about, is that they're kind of so omnipresent that like your grandma knows what they are. But I mean, I already think this is kind of happening. If you look at the giant explosion of indie games over the pandemic, it can take time, but I think we're on the right track. Remember kids, buy indie games. You can't tell how good a game is by its trailer. Nintendo is a crooked company, and liquor before beer, never fear, don't do heroin. I'll see you next time.